Welcome back to Division I Rejects. This is episode 150. 150. That's an incredible number. I'm your host, Kobe Manzo. I've been here for, all 150 of them, which is kind of ridiculous, but it's been a blast. I've got another great one for you today. We're joined by a man that has probably one of the most interesting stories that we've had in all 150 episodes. That's Coach Bobby Rome. He's the head coach at Florida Memorial University down in, guess where? The Lions are not the first team or even the most interesting team that he's coached. This man, we talk all about it with him. We have a nice long conversation with him. He played at UNC, plays in the NFL for a few years, goes overseas, plays in Russia for the Moscow Patriots, then ends up coaching an international college or university in Russia, the Pandas, which is a badass mascot in itself. And he talks about being an ambassador for the game overseas and all these other interesting pieces along his journey, as well as a freaking all-star lineup while he was at Chapel Hill there, which a lot of great stuff and more coming from him. I will say we dealt with some internet connection problems, so if you're obviously going to notice a bit of that during the conversation. You've been warned. Sorry. I can produce the show. Can't really increase internet connectivity. But Coach Rome was the man. So definitely excited for you guys to hear that conversation. Today, as I record this, February 12th, Super Bowl's wrapped up. You're not going to find a whole lot of conversation on today's episode from that. You can find that just about anywhere else. Let's focus on the stuff that we do best, that small college football. And some topics for today. We've got some coaches with D3 ties that were in the Super Bowl just this weekend. So we're going to talk about those guys a little bit. And then two more other kind of deals. There was a wild take on NIL money, that was posted to the internet and the Twitter and all that kind of space just this last week. I want to break that down, take kind of an examination at that. Would love to hear your guys' take on this person and what they believe college football programs should be doing with name, image, and likeness money. Then finally, another kind of interesting point, talking about the prospect of, general managers coming to college football and what that could mean and how it maybe relate to the NFL level. So many different things about how the college football landscape is changing right now. And as we know, it always starts at Division I and it'll trickle down to some of these smaller levels as well. So I'm excited to talk about that stuff. Per usual, all the timestamps, video chapters in the description below. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever, all of them are in the description. Subscribe on the YouTube. Hit up the socials. Just past 7,000 on Instagram. Thank you very much. Super excited to grow that following. And like I said, that's about it for tonight. Going to be a fun one. Let's get right to that conversation with Coach Rome. Joining the show tonight, a man that has played and coached football in some very interesting places. He's led Lions. He's led Pandas. Right now, though, he's the man at the helm for Florida Memorial University, Coach Bobby Rome. Coach, what's going on?
Nothing much, man. Nothing much. Just thankful, to be on your platform and to be able to let folks know a little bit about FMU and let them know a little bit about myself. Well,
I hear you. You got, looks like your network over there might be giving out on you a little bit. I'm not sure what we got going on.
That's it. Can you see me now? Am I all good now?
Yeah, you went little on me. You went with, I don't know what's going on. I haven't seen that before. The bandwidth low, but I can still hear you, so I'm not too concerned about it. But we can. There you go. He's back full screen. I like it like that. There we go. And we can jump right into this thing and just talk to me about, man. Like, we'll get to your personal story a little bit later because I try to do my research and you've got what I think is a really cool, unique story. We'll get to that, but let's start off with your guys right now, man. Talk about what year 2 was like for you and the boys down there and seemed to be exceeding a lot of expectations.
Well, I mean, year 2 was for us. We came into FMU for the first time. I really didn't know much about the Sun Conference, so I kind of took my time to kind of observe. Year 2 was more of us kind of putting our plan into action. We had a successful all season. We recruited the type of players that we wanted for our program. We recruited explosive players, both on offense and defense. And we just translate to the field. And we had a lot to be proud about this past season. We led NAIA in total offense as far as total yards concerned, and led our conference as well. And in a number of statistical categories. So we got a lot. We got a good stepping stone, and we finished third in the Sun Conference, and had an opportunity to play for a share of the conference title against Kaiser at the end of the season, and then Kaiser was Kaiser. Kaiser.
Yep.
Coach Doug Scotia's got a pretty good. He's done a tremendous job over there at Kaiser, and they in the show they won a national championship. So that's the standard here in the Sun Conference. We got great teams up and down this conference. Every week you got to show them play. So it's a challenge, literally, for us to go 1-0
Yeah.
every single week, and that's kind of the mantra of our program right now. Here at
Flomo's on the
Flomo.
up, man. I can't
Yeah,
let
we
you I can't
definitely
let you
are.
drop that one and just keep cruising. That Flomo in itself that just rolls right off the tongue. That's awesome. But the success to hear that's pretty
Yeah.
cool that it's an all around deal and you guys get to be a big part in contributing to that, huh?
Definitely, man. Definitely. Like we're excited. A lot of people don't know about us, but we're right here in South Florida, right, right in Miami Gardens, right in the heart, right in the heart of where everything happens down here in Miami. And I mean, we have some outstanding athletes on our football program, and just, and some outstanding young men that want to be community leaders. These guys, you don't have to tell them to get them to be involved in the community. These guys that go do it on their own. They'll pop up at the youth practices and stuff like that. They'll pop up at elementary schools and stuff like that. So, I mean, this has been really good for our community to have this football program in Flomo, to kind of bridge that gap with the community. And it's been a great thing. It's been a big family atmosphere, throughout the city of Miami with our university. So we're excited about where we're going. And like you said, Flomo is on the rise.
Flomo's on the up, man. I like that a lot. And I saw kind of an interesting piece of your schedule. You guys had a scrimmage in, what was it, week 4? Somewhere along those
Yeah.
lines. How did
Yeah.
that come about? That's a little unorthodox when you think about the course of the
Yeah.
season.
So,
Yeah, I see the head shake
so,
already.
so,
Okay.
yeah. So what happened was when we signed the contract, we was under the influence that they were going to get this John Melvin. So we've been a new football program, So
Yeah.
we gave grace to a upcoming potential new football program that was supposed to be certified
Okay.
before the season started, and I don't know what happened, but it fell through, and
Ah,
uh, because of that, we weren't able to count it as a legitimate game. But we did not want to, just not play the game. We wanted the guys to come out there and have the experience of coming down to Miami, and we
interesting.
wanted to be good. We wanted to be good hosts for them. So we played the game, and it wasn't a close game, but at the same time, it was a great experience for John Melvin University, and also, to be honest, it kind of started something for us, because we scored 70 points in that scrimmage and then came back the following week and scored 79. So, I mean,
Okay.
it helped our offense kind of stay on track and gave our guys some confidence that, after playing a team like Grambling, like, hey, you know what, guys, like, we really can put the ball in the box, we really can be explosive on offense. And, we needed something like that to kind of show us that. And it kind of did the trick for us.
You talk about obviously being a new football program. It gets reinstated in 2019, just a few years before you ended up over there. Last time they played was back in the late 1950s. Is there any
Yeah.
talk of, hey guys, like it's been a shitty week for practice today. We're putting on the old equipment, so you guys really get to see how good you got it, and we'll see if you still want to play come Saturday. Has that ever been a punishment at all?
No, not at all, not at all.
We
But
might
I
need to
mean,
get those out.
something to definitely consider. Put that one ball, put that leather helmet on their head, and
Yeah.
go out there
Yep.
and go out there and have inside run and see how they like it and stuff. Yeah,
Just
something.
you see the script for practice, and it's just inside run, and then it's just for
Oh,
about 40
inside.
minutes, and then a little conditioning break, maybe a little water break, and then it's back, just zone,
Definitely,
power, ISO, whatever it is, right?
definitely straight short yardage and goal line stuff
I like that. I like that. But
with the leather helmet.
that's big time. I say that kind of jokingly also, but then the fact that to be such, like you said, a new football program and turn this thing around and in big part to you and your staff and to be competing for a conference championship. You mentioned a couple of those losses earlier. Kaiser, who goes on to be the national champion, to show the prowess that they've had at that level. You talked already about the loss to Grambling and FCS squad, and even your other 2 losses against some nationally ranked programs that have shown a really high pedigree. And don't get me wrong, I'll be the first to say, like, there's very little moral victories in college football, but the fact that you guys are here and this margin of defeat has just, at least from an outsider's perspective, continued to shrink, feels like you guys are right there getting closer and closer to taking that next step. How do you feel about that?
I definitely feel confident in that. We definitely would. Our goal was to go 1-0 every week. You know what I mean, regardless of who showed up on our schedule. And you know, I think the Bluefield game was a big game for us because we were going to a game where Bluefield's won the last 15 out of 17 games at that point.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know what I mean?
Rolling.
And for us going to the game, I believe at the time, we were probably uh, 1-6. They won 6 in our last 7 games going into the game, but we understood that we had a full off season in our belt. It was the first time I've had a spring football with these guys, and
Yeah.
so we were confident going into the matchup, and we lost in the last second of that game. So that was something that I told the guys, like, yeah, we have to build from this. We could take this 16-hour trip back and hang our heads, and we can say, hey, we did better than we did last season. Or we can say, you know what, we can be a threat. We can actually be a threat, get better every single
Oh yeah.
day, and see how we compete. In our conference, and our guys accepted the challenge and they went out there and they competed every single day. St. Thomas, when you look at a team like St. Thomas, I believe they should have been probably ranked a little higher than what they were.
Yeah.
When you look at the fact that they had a team like Kaiser down in the playoffs, uh, down 21 points, and Kaiser came back and beat them. But the game prior to that, they took a school like Bethel. They played Bethel. St. Thomas played Bethel, and they beat them by 60 points. And then Kaiser beat them by 60 points. But then St. Thomas beat Reinhardt by 55
Oh
the
yeah.
week
You
prior.
start playing that
Yeah,
transitive game, man. Shit gets scary quick, right? Because all of a
yeah,
sudden, like you said, maybe this team should have been a lot higher because of what they've put on tape and what they've done in the last couple weeks. That's what's crazy about this level of football that I love is that, like you said, it is 1-0 every week, and you just don't know what squad's going to roll out there on Saturday.
you don't. You don't. And like I said, especially down here in South Florida where, it's a hotbed for recruiting. You just never
Yep.
know who's going to be on the other sideline and what kind of playmaker he is. So, Um, it's like I said, we call it the SEC of the NAIA. That's what
Okay.
a lot of people call our conference down here in the Sun Conference, and I'm glad to be a team that's competing for the championships in this conference.
A lot of playmakers down there. Obviously, a lot of big time football. You talk about the Division One level, especially when it comes to FBS and Power Five programs.
Oh
I
yeah,
definitely wager there's still some dudes that are slipping through the cracks there, and you're going to be the benefactor of a lot of those guys. Yeah.
oh yeah, oh yeah, man. When you go watch high school football here, we go to the Mecca. They call it the trash pile. They call it the Mecca. I
Okay.
mean, I'm just amazed at the size and the talent level of some of these football programs that's on the high school level down here in South Florida. And all you can do is just lick your chops and just hope someone falls through the cracks, or someone hasn't been doing their job, and those guys stay home and play for us. But with the landscape of college football changing, I don't see why FLOMO would not be a great opportunity for any student athlete when you consider the things, considering the transfer portal and considering how things are looking right now. You know, you can go to an NAIA program and transfer to any place in the country with no penalty.
Yeah.
So
You're
that
right.
in
Because
itself makes us. So that in itself makes us better than NAIA. I mean, makes us better than a JUCO.
that's a very
And
interesting
then
point because you talk about
and
obviously the
then
separation and distinction from the NCAA to
right,
NAIA and some of those
right,
loopholes, if you will, around some of the kind of the rules and things that have been made, and they're starting to kind of whittle down on what exactly this transfer portal entails. I will admit, though, it's interesting to hear that take from a current head coach at an NAIA program because I know kind of not to go on a crazy tangent. Think about the football that the other 70% of the world is familiar with. And you talk
right,
about these clubs that pick up these players, and these players sometimes their only hope is to go to a bigger and better club. Well, American
right.
football works in a very different fashion. A lot of coaches don't kind of adopt that mindset, and they want to have guys, and rightfully so, that are there for 3, 4, 5 years, sometimes even more with COVID. But to hear kind of that take and to use this as a platform and an opportunity for some of the athletes, it's very interesting to hear, admittedly.
Well, I look at it in a different perspective. For me, you know, I'm confident. I'm confident in our retention rate here at
Hell yeah.
FMU. We've only had 2 guys that decided to leave and go elsewhere since I've been here.
Yeah.
So I'm confident in our retention rate, and we do things to help our student athletes stay. I don't believe there's any other college football program in the country that works as hard as we do for our student athletes upon when it's time for them to leave FMU. When they leave FMU, like I said, not only they have their college degree, they had a great education, but at the same time, my relation. I'm also the head coach of the FCS Bowl. I've also been the
Yep.
head coach of the Tropical Bowl. So that gives them that helps for guys that's aspiring to play at the next level. When you look at the HBCU Legacy Bowl, I had two student athletes that were selected to play in that game. And they're going to be competing against Division I competition. So if I am a transfer guy and I'm looking at a school to go to, um, I think, and I want to play at the next level, I think going the NAIA route and going to a coach that's familiar with the pro settings and how to get guys to the professional ranks. I'm not just talking about the NFL, I'm talking about alternative football leagues as well. Uh, if that's what you want to do, FOMO is a great home for that. And the reason why, there's no other place around the country where you could train outside 4 seasons out the year. And if
Yep.
for a young man that's really serious about taking it to the next level, I mean, there's not a better place. And for me, my job, hey, I want you to go out there and play your best football. Go out there, put your best film, your game on the film, and see what happens. But my job is to make sure I retain. That's my job, is to make sure I keep you at flow mode and to get you across that stage as a graduate. And we've been very successful at doing that. Guys are flying in, and they're not leaving. They're not leaving because they see that the Tampa Bay Bucks will be here on the 19th.
Oh
To
yeah.
get our guys height, timing, and stuff like that. So they see that they're getting the same opportunity they're getting down the street at the University of Miami, Florida International, and Florida Atlantic. And like I said, we're providing those for our student athletes. So that's why I feel like I'm confident I can go ahead and say that, hey, come on, yeah, you can go here and leave it, and you can leave NAIA with no penalty. You don't have to sit out a year if you want to go somewhere else. But I'm telling you right now, there's no better place to, if you want to be a football player. I mean, if you want to be a football player, you want to get a great education. There's no better place to do it than at Florida Memorial University.
Big time. Yeah. Hey, come here because you can go anywhere else. But guess what? You'll get on campus. You're not going to want to. You're going to stick around just because you want
Bingo,
those kind of
bingo,
opportunities. I like that. I
bingo.
like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And mentioned it a little bit, talking about some of your connections at those bowl games and being around that
Mhm.
top level talent. Good for your players, obviously, to have that plug, but great for you also to be around that level of talent and to see and pick
Oh
from
yeah,
some
for
other
sure.
great brains in the coaching world. That's got to be big for you. But to take even a further step back on kind of your personal journey, let's talk about you going to UNC as a quarterback, making the move
Yeah.
not to wide receiver or safety or, running back, to fullback,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
Putting on a couple
yeah,
LBs, and you talk about some of that inside run we were talking about earlier. You've been through a
yeah.
few of those. Tell me about that transition.
Definitely. Well, I will start with just being in the quarterback room. When you look at my quarterback room at UNC Chapel Hill, and you're gonna have, just looking at our quarterback room, we had Joe Daly, who's the wide receiver coach for the Carolina Panthers, Matt Baker, who is the special office assistant for the Atlanta Falcons, TJ Yates, wide receiver coach for the Atlanta Falcons, and then you got Ben Johnson. He's the big card. Right now,
Yep.
and he's the offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions. All these guys are in the quarterback room with me at UNC Chapel Hill. So, and then you got Arthur Smith, who's the head coach of the Falcons, who's our backup left guard. So,
That's
I
crazy.
mean,
That's
so
crazy.
when you're coming from a situation like that, your head coach is Butch Davis. Um, you know, your offensive line coach is Sam Pittman. Your defensive coordinator is Chuck Pagano. When you're surrounded by that type of, those
That's
type of
ridiculous.
guys.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, yeah.
Y'all had
When
an
you're surrounded,
all-star team and an all-star
yeah,
coaching staff. That's
yeah.
crazy.
Our graduate assistant is Brad Davis, LSU offensive line coach.
Yeah.
The other one on defense was Coach Betcher, who was the defensive coordinator for the New York Giants. So, I
Man.
mean, just across the board, when you look at what Coach Davis put together at Carolina, and basically you're coming from that type of cloth. Um, I mean, football. I mean, just being around some of the top, the best of the best. I mean, that's what we're used to at Carolina. So, we got to throw my little Carolina plug in. So,
Hell yeah.
I was just blessed. I came from very at Carolina, and those connections, the network has helped me kind of expand my coaching, help me expand my coaching career and be able to, have access to bowl games and stuff like that. And I just took advantage of it, and I try to use those resources to give to our small football program. When I look at I call it small compared to, University of Miami and
Yeah,
some
of
of those
course.
bigger programs, but, it
It's
gives
all
our
relative.
program a voice. Kind of don't, yeah.
100%. And asking about that obviously and taking about all those experiences, how that impacts your coaching style today and yada yada. But I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about what you did across the pond after a few years in the league over here. You go overseas, the Moscow Patriots, and that's a name that I wasn't familiar with until I started doing a little bit of research. And it's just a whole rabbit hole over there of how the game and the NFL in particular, but just the game in general is taking this much more widespread approach and trying to target these new audiences. Not obviously a new conversation to you. You go over there and play for multiple years and then, decided, that that's not enough. I'm going to stick around and coach for 3 more years. Talk about your experience overseas, summarize that, and just kind of the preconceptions you had before you really made that trip, that journey.
Well, I would say it was, me, I try to be a forward thinker. I try to think ahead of the game. I'll be honest, when I got out of college and, when my professional career was kind of on the downs, because fullbacks were kind of fading.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I jumped into sales. I jumped into sales. My first sales job was uh, car salesman. You know what I mean? They
Okay.
sent me to get sales school. And the truth is, I got really good at selling cars. And I remember I was doing a test drive with somebody, and they just told me, they just said, "Man," they say, "I'm not buying this car, but I just want to get you out of the dealership, just to talk to you one on one and tell you, man, like you got so much more potential, to just be in here at this car dealership selling cars." Now the guy didn't know at the time I was probably one of the top salesmen on the East Coast at the time at Nissan, but I was doing really well. I was doing really, really well, but at the same time, I felt like he was right. I felt like he was right, and so basically, I went to sales school and I learned a lot. I learned a lot, and I said, man, what is the most valuable thing I could possibly sell? You know, and I had all my teammates are in the NFL making all this money and stuff like that. I'm just like, what is the most valuable thing that I could sell? And I thought the most valuable thing I could sell is myself.
Okay.
And I still came up with this wild idea, like, man, you know what? I'm gonna go to the biggest country in the world, and I'm gonna scream as loud as I can from the biggest country in the world, and I'm gonna see how much noise I can make. And I'll tell you what, man. My family thought I was crazy. I'm talking about my mom, my dad, but I just did it. I went out there. I went out there to play for the Moscow Patriots, and I started. I guess I could jump on this website called EuroPlayer. I made a nice profile, and the first thing they said is like, "Dude, you played in the NFL. You sure you want to come play over here?" I'm like, "Yeah. I mean, I want to play football. I just want to play football. I don't want to worry about getting cut.
Yeah.
That's what I've been dealing with over here in America. And they gave me a platform to do that, and I took that situation and I decided that, you know what, I'm gonna take this situation one step further. How so? How would I do that? I decided that I'm gonna go and take this situation and actually go to different cities and try to be an ambassador for football for the for American football internationally. And and at the time I could clearly see that America was trying to the NFL was trying to expand overseas and trying to
Mm-hmm.
do different things to kind of create a blueprint internationally for American football. So it kind of just took work. It kind of worked out, and I kind of, it just kind of worked out at the right time. And, started off playing over there, started going to different cities, doing master classes. And I went from city to city doing master classes. And you know what? Football just kind of blew up over there. And then next thing you know, I'm getting a call to go over to Far East Federal University to come be their head football coach. They
Oh yeah.
wanted to start a football program in the international university. Um, because they've been playing football in China, Japan, and internationally, and at their international schools. And our international school at the time I was at, we competed for those same type of students. We competed for students in Russia, students, in China. So we competed for students in North Korea. So we thought bringing American football to Far East Federal University would be something that would attract more students, and it was something that kind of just took off and kind of just blew up in front of our face.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, and it's a lot of the same ideas as a lot of the schools over here. You know, you add on that football program for, it could be a plethora of reasons, but for a lot of them, it's to attract students, to bring more wholesome, I guess, connected college experience as we've come to know it, at least in America. And it's a very interesting deal. Talk about just like that. Talk about that coaching experience over there. That had to differ, I would assume, a good deal from your duties, maybe coaching down at Florida Memorial now.
Oh yeah, it was very different. I mean, down there, they just kind of gave me some footballs and rolled it out, rolled the footballs out, and just said, "Hey,
You might have had the
give us the
same
football
equipment
program."
as that Flomo
Yeah.
team back in '58.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. It was rough. I mean, it was rough. I didn't know what I was walking into. It was rough, man. And, but it was a great experience. For me, I learned time management. I learned time management because I had to meet with each one of those guys. Those position groups. Throughout the day around class schedules and stuff like that. And I took the whole day. To get my meetings off and stuff like that for my student athletes. I learned how to use interpreters. I learned how to lean on other people when that was something had a big problem with. And I learned how to lean on other people and, how to trust other people, and, I kind of learned how to operate a program by myself
Yeah.
first, and it kind of gave me a background and knowledge that a lot of people don't have. As far as startups and stuff like that, I'm pretty good at those. And that's why I guess people seem to turn around and flow mo so fast.
Hell yeah. All comes full circle, man. All of
Yeah,
it.
definitely.
Yeah. And thankfully, you didn't have to start maybe the program here from the ground up, but I'm sure at times it certainly may have felt like that. But Coach, cannot say
Definitely.
enough. I appreciate you coming on here, man. You got an incredible
Thank you.
story. I'm glad I could at least hear, a good portion of it. Definitely going to be following up with you guys. Wishing you nothing but the best.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us. And like I said, I have had a blast tonight, man. We had a blast on the call, and thank you for having me.
Of course. See you, Coach. Have a good night.
See you. You have a great one.
All right, I appreciate Coach joining us tonight. Like I said, one of the more interesting stories we've had on here. He's got a good thing going down there, and don't let the record fool you. Those guys, like you said, they're going to be a weapon in that conference for some years to come. Don't be surprised if they continue to make more noise. Did crack me up saying he sleeps a little bit easier knowing Coach Soch is not in the conference anymore. I love that. And how about the confidence from him talking about his team? Maybe not being a stepping stone, but having the opportunities there for all of his prospective student athletes is really cool stuff. But let's move over to Division III and talk about this. Another great thread from D3 Direct. We've got 9 coaches with D3 ties that were a part of Sunday's matchup. The Chiefs come out of that one in overtime, and what was it was a football game. Wasn't the craziest football game ever. It was definitely a football game. But let's take a look at some of these guys, starting with Deuce Schwartz. He's an offensive quality control coach for the 49ers from Union College, played quarterback there. And his first NFL experience looks like 2015-16 as offensive coaching assistant with the Bills. So it's always interesting for me to see how these guys stick around because there's so many just transitive kind of properties to these positions. There's not a lot of security with that. Obviously, if you've been around for this long, though, he's damn good at what he does. So shout out to him, but continuing to move down, Cameron Brown, a defensive quality control coach for the 49ers. At Case Western Reserve, he played defensive end over there. I can't read. But making waves in his first season with the Niners, they said here, and just a really cool story from all of these guys playing and coaching at the D3 level, and now, seeing right there, still making an impact at his alma mater is pretty special, and kind of the progression these guys have made. Another analyst here, Peyton Grieve, who comes from MIT, and all academic honors, just like the stories kind of go on here. The defensive coordinator, Spagnuolo, that's kind of a bigger story. And when you talk about him, you see the accolades kind of right there. I shouldn't say accolades, just kind of some of the things he's accomplished. I mean, 5th season as a Chiefs defensive coordinator. He's now a 3-time Super Bowl champion coach. Actually, I believe that might be 4-time now. 2-year starter at wide receiver. This dude was certainly a stud in his playing days. The quarterback coach from the Chiefs. How about that? And just going through this, just really cool. Other people with some great D3 ties there. So I wanted to make sure to mention that because there are a lot of people that are involved with small college sports and football especially that make it to the big stage. Not necessarily all of them are suiting up in between the lines, but there are so many people in a managerial position, in a content creation position, in an admin position, you know what I mean? I go down the list that all have these ties to their quote-unquote small schools and their athletic programs, which is really cool. But we'll move on. Today's going to be a bit of a quicker episode because it's just me and I got a couple brief points to talk about. But This is a note that I really wanted to talk about. I thought it was a very interesting perspective. And the headline here, it's an article from Football Scoop. It's an awesome publication. They produce some pretty interesting stuff. Right here, a collective CEO, this is the quote from him. I've told every AD in the country, no more hiring analysts. Fund your NIL instead. And that just poses so many questions for me. Like, that's very interesting. And so when you read more and more about this, right? College football is a big moneymaker. It's the biggest in college athletics, especially when your team performs at a high level. And when you do that, obviously you're got a lot of really talented student athletes there that in turn are probably going to demand more money. Now, money, there's only so much that can go around, and your allocation of those resources as a program becomes a very big factor of your success. So this story is about Jason Belzer, who manages Oklahoma's collective of record, the Crimson and Cream, which is it's a long way of saying he manages the money they pay their players through like NIL and shit like that. But he manages that, but doesn't just manage their collective over there for the Sooners. How about Notre Dame's, Syracuse, dozens of others, all the way down to Robert Morris, and all of them have funny, like, different names. Irish United, Orange United, the Romo, Rise. Anyways, he's the CEO of Student Athlete NIL, which in itself markets to athletics departments as the quote here says, the turnkey NIL operation. They do everything from soliciting sponsorships and donations to finding marketing opportunities for athletes and doling out payroll. So actually distributing the money from the actual NIL collective. So this is like where the money actually comes from here. And so that's why I give that kind of background, because his words here and his experience certainly start to make a little bit more sense. And, right here, we get into a piece that is really crazy. Right here, he says that, quote, we had already prepared a report of every single Oklahoma student athlete on the football roster and what their value was going to be in the portal for December and January. That's obviously the open period. You have that 30-day window when athletes on scholarship can enter their blah, 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 blah. Then he says, we were able to go back to every single player and allow them to know, this is what we believe you're worth. This is what we're going to offer you. And there's not really going to be a whole lot of negotiation, because if you could think you can get a lot more in the portal, have fun. That's what he says. So now, again, this man is not officially connected with the Oklahoma Athletics Department. He manages the NIL collective. He's the third party that kind of oversees this exchange of money. Imagine being a player. You do your exit meeting with your coach, probably your position coach, maybe your coordinator and the head coach, I would assume, at most levels. It's kind of how it usually goes in college football. And then you got one more exit meeting. It's with the man who heads up the NIL fund. And maybe he comes in with a briefcase. Maybe he comes in with a duffel bag. I don't know what he's got. But he says, hey, Kobe, had a pretty good year this year, right? We think you're worth X amount based on our calculations, whatever algorithms, whatever they follow. We think you're worth this. And like he says, there's not really a negotiation, because if I say you're full of shit, I'm worth double, triple that, then their response, it would sound like, is, interesting. Good luck. Let's go see if you are. You know what I mean? And go ahead and get the portal. And it's a very upfront, black and white, just interesting way of managing this. You have someone who is this third party coming in with no very little emotional attachment to these guys, these players, and whatever, that is making these decisions, which obviously has some great advantages, maybe some disadvantages. And now you're treating this really as a business. And it goes back to the conversation we had just a week ago about these college student athletes turning over and being considered employees from these colleges and universities. When you talk about it in this light, it starts to make more and more sense. If you're going to sit me down and tell me what I'm worth, and I have to agree to a deal to continue to generate that revenue and continue to have that income from you, I'm certainly an employee. It's not a student athlete. This is directly involved with my performance on a football field and my notoriety and my name, image, and likeness. Oh my gosh. It's really crazy. And the fact that this man who's doing this, he doesn't work for the University of Oklahoma. He is, by all means, his own business owner that is just involved with them through a contract to manage this money from these collectives. It's really wild. So says right here, what happens when Sooner players want more money from Oklahoma? Or not Oklahoma, the Crimson and Cream Collective. Belzer explained his side of the Caden Green transfer. Caden Green, top 100 recruit, started as a true freshman, for all intents and purposes, was the future of Oklahoma's offensive line until seemingly out of the blue, he transferred to Missouri, SEC kind of blue chip type program. He says here, quote, when it came to Caden, just like everybody else, we presented him with a contract for the coming year. He was still under contract with us. When he did respond with us, he basically said he wanted substantially more money. We looked at it. We said, okay, we're not going to give you what you're asking, but we're willing to come up. So there was, in fact, a little bit of a negotiation there. We basically came close to matching what he asked, and then he sort of said, you know what? I'm going to go into the portal. At the end of the day, we can only have those conversations. That's what Belzer said. He goes into the portal, and you know what I mean? I don't know what his eventual deal looked like at Missouri. I'd assume it had to be pretty good. But it goes on to talk about, imagine any other business working this way. Imagine a Tampa Bay Rays outfielder wanting to negotiate a contract extension after fielding an offer from the Brewers. And it's like, the instability here and the precedent that this sets is really scary for how college athletics are going to operate as a whole in the future, because what you have and what we've had in years, this is nothing new, is an escalating arms race in college football. And it starts with, NIL and other pieces, and then it ends with who knows what. But if you're a somewhat competent football program, especially at the Division I FBS level, and your opponent is doing XYZ, you have to do XYZ ABC. And if that analogy makes no sense to you, I'm sorry, it's not the best way to illustrate it. Hey, how about this? I go to Northern Michigan. Michigan Tech, our rival, Division II squads, but just humor me here. Michigan Tech, when they have their kids on a visit, all of a sudden they've got live Huskies that they're taking photos with in the photo shoot. What are we going to turn around and do? We're the Wildcats. We better get some live cats in the photo shoot. Michigan Tech, all of a sudden, they start their NIL collective. They've got deals for half of their student athletes that are now generating income. Well, if I'm their competitor, if I'm their rival, what do I have to do to at least match it? I'm going to one-up them. I'm going to make a deal for every single one of my athletes. Or if you're Utah, get them a lease on a brand new truck from a dealership locally. That's incredible. It's really scary. I think that concept is unreal. So now it comes in the question of his original statement, is that where these dollars are going, where they're allocated, and the importance of deciding how that is determined is where this comes into play. Why are we spending, we as in just college football in general, why are we spending so much money on these analysts and other titles of people that, let's face it, aren't having an incredible impact on our program, even though they play integral roles in all of these college football programs? That cannot be understated. But to an outsider, it may not seem that way. Why, instead of doing this, why don't we take all of those funds, these year-long salaries of these full-time staffers, and put that into our Crimson and Cream? Put that into our Irish United, our Syracuse Orange United, our Romo Rise, whatever the hell you want to call it, right? And a lot of it comes from donations, but it comes back to this. This is where he says, no more hiring analysts, stop spending money, figure out how to fund your NIL program. We have to pay the labor, and the bill is only going to get bigger and bigger. So how could you turn around and say, yeah, we can hire more support staff? That's not realistic. That's his quote there. And I think this is a really trying time that for college football that they're going to be going through. And I just can't really see the end of this or what this entails. Yes, we'll see the effect of Division I much sooner than we will at D2 and D3. But you'd be crazy to think that none of this will trickle down. Like, this is, in fact, going to happen. There are going to be guys, whether it is guys, demanding money at the D2 level, or whether it's guys at D1 that get snubbed out of money they think they deserve that now end up at Division II, Division III schools because of changes and mishaps and whatever. This is going to trickle down and affect the lower levels of college football. I have no idea what the long term is of this. I don't have nearly the big enough brain to figure that out. It's just a very interesting proposition that I thought at least I would touch on, and I would like to kind of leave those thoughts with you guys. I don't have a say one way or the other. The way this is being handled is scary. And if it is going to be handled in this way, then yes, college athletes certainly do need to be directed as employees at this level, because you talk about them being paid for their labor and their services in direct correlation with their performance on a field, court, rink, whatever it is. It all comes back to that. They should probably be labeled as employees of the university and not college, just student athletes. It's just incredible. I don't think I'd believe myself saying that, but that's pretty wild stuff. I'd love to hear your take on that, and definitely some very interesting words. But the last piece that I kind of wanted to end on for this episode, another kind of, it builds off that last point that I just talked about a good amount. The tweet right here is from Jordan Reed, and he says, pretty simply, can't say it enough. General manager is the best up-and-coming job in college football. Coaches want less and less off-the-field responsibilities. College GMs will be paid like coordinators soon. Wow. And I saw this, and I was like, wow, that's crazy. And then I was like, man, how many college football coaches do you know? I know a lot of them that are obsessed with football and coaching football and everything about football, right? But that sounds stupid, I know, but just football. These kind of guys don't get into the profession to be sending out tweets and, pampering to visits and doing all this recruiting nonsense and posing for the photo and everything that comes with the transfer portal and trying to do this and do that. They want a team of dudes that they can coach, they can develop to play the game of football. And obviously they want to get the dudes there that they want, blah, 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 blah. But all this extra shit now that is becoming of college football, going to your alumni and demanding a dollar amount for an NIL collective to keep your program alive and going and trying to find new donors or going to generate new deals for student athletes and for your program and all these different pieces, a lot of people see them as distractions off the football field. So now what would the role of a general manager be in all of this? And we see it at the NFL level, right? And there's a lot more politics that go into it than just being a GM and being a coach. And some places have a great synergy in that. You talk about the Detroit Lions right now and the synergy that they've had, right? In that GM and head coach position, we see those two just inseparable at the hip seemingly, and just in step with each other every piece along the way. Some places are not like that. Sometimes they operate almost in completely different worlds. And that can be for better or for worse. Would this come into case, in college football? And now it goes into talking about some of the other off-field responsibilities. You look at least the FBS recruiting calendar for the year, and I can pull it up here, so you should be able to read a good portion of it. And you look at this, it's divided into dead period, quiet periods, evaluation periods, and contact periods, and relatively self-explanatory. But you see how complex and all the things that go on in this calendar, and a lot of it is during the season, right? So the less that a coach has to coordinate and work on the official visits and the recruiting mail that gets sent out and all the communication and all the setup and planning and tracking transfer portal data and seeing, the less that they have to do with all of that and funding and money and event, and they can just focus on football, all of a sudden that coaching job becomes a lot more appealing. And so when you have a great general manager, whatever sport, whatever level it is, how freeing that is for a coach to be just that, to be a coach. And that's just one example of it kind of being the recruiting calendar. And that's just a whole nother piece that comes along with the job. You see how just thorough this is and when you're allowed to do things and when not. And then it comes to the transfer portal windows. And you have to worry about all these things. You have this window, at least for FBS, from December 4th through January 2nd, that kind of month there. There's also these other windows depending on circumstances. My long way of saying there's so many things to worry about now as a football coach that aren't football related. And that, I'm assuming, is a very unappeasing, annoying concept for many football coaches that have been lifers in this possession and don't want to deal with that shit. So I think it's a very real possibility that GMs become much more commonplace and that they are going to play a very large role in the success and the organization of a lot of the more blue chip and profound programs of college football right now. Just a lot of perspective thought today. Not exactly much hard facts for you, but just doing a lot of thinking this last week on college football, where it's at. And, now for as much as the NCAA, I think, has made some boneheaded decisions in the last couple of years, they really need to come together and really do something and put their foot down in this. I'm not saying snuff it out entirely. There's a reason NIL and these different pieces are around the transfer portal. They all seem to be vital assets of what college football has become, and there's a lot of good that's come out of it. But there needs to be a line, right? Right now there is no line, and that escalating arms race that we talk about, just keeping, exceeding another expectation from a rival, from a different school, there needs to be a line, there needs to be a ceiling, and there needs to be some type of regulation. And that's right now what we're missing is standardization and regulation. And then what happens is teams that don't have the funding are going to fall off. And now we're seeing that when you have executives from the Big Ten and the SEC that are now coming together to form like a consortium and things, and people are worried about one big super conference. That's a scary prospect, right? Because now you have schools that are not funded the same way as some of these big-time programs that are going to strictly just fall behind. And when you fall behind in an era like that where the rest of the college landscape just continues to escalate, you're not going to come back. You're going to be left in the dust. And that's a scary prospect for a lot of programs. We'll see how it affects the D2 landscape, the D3 landscape. NAIA obviously is going to have different kind of regulations. Going to be all weird. That's what it's going to be. 2024 is going to be weird in college football. I'm saying that right now. It's not really a bold prediction. It already has been. We're less than 2 months in. But appreciate you guys listening to this episode. A lot of random thoughts from myself. Hopefully you enjoyed at least a little bit of it. Please let me know your thoughts on some of those topics. Shoot it in the comments, whether it be on the socials, on YouTube, wherever. But I appreciate you tuning in for D1 Rejects. Been Kobe Manzo.